I've been getting beat on a little bit by a couple of non-thinking Democrat idiots that want to continue to try and press my button. So I'm going to try and explain this the best way that I can with my background and 35 years of military experience across the globe. Almost every single engagement since the invasion of Panama, I participated in one form or another, mostly boots on ground. Sergeant Major's Academy, served 4 different commanders in that capacity, served numerous commanders as a first sergeant and leading troops in the field, and then intel work and into counterterrorism. I know a little bit about the subject. I've studied the subject, and we have history to rely on. So I'm going to try and not get too angry. I'll watch the filth and foul words, but I do want to respond to these idiots because they're just not getting it. Okay, Russia, Ukraine, United States. Now, this is all going to track back to the idiot Biden, and there's no way it doesn't. So I had the opportunity the other night, and it was a good opportunity, and I went and I listened, and General David Petraeus came to Phoenix, and he was stumping a book, but he was also doing question and answer and talking a lot about the subjects we're talking about now, especially technology and where war is going in the future. I've served General Petraeus in 2 different capacities, and one served on his security team in Shebregan, Afghanistan. And the guy is ironclad. I may not agree with all his political views, but when it comes to military strategy, he's one of the best. I mean, Schwarzkopf probably would take that title if he was still alive. So a lot of these things that I'm going to tell you about are things that not only I believe, but real seasoned generals. Not talking about Lloyd Austin, because he's a completely sellout. Lloyd Austin is. So, yeah, and if you don't understand that, Democrats, see, when you're a 1-star general, you're still a soldier for soldiers. You're still connected to soldiers. When you're a 2-star, you start getting away from that. A 3-star, you're in the political class, so you're not getting your 4-star. You're quasi in the political class with your 2nd star, but you still have enough you say to kind of break that. But once you're the 3-star and the 4-star, you are a political puppet. 99% of them political puppet. And that's my own personal opinion. I think that's why they scandaled General Petraeus out, because he wouldn't play their games and wouldn't become their political puppet. The guy is a brilliant leader, a brilliant general, developed our counterintelligence strategy that worked. And then when we turned that off, we had to have the surge, and he had to redevelop it in a new manner. And once applied again correctly, we won. And every time we start winning, what do the politicians do? They ramp it down, turn it off, and cause a loss. So how does that correlate with what's going on in Ukraine? Well, let me tell you, dummy, and this is for the Democrat. You know who you are, Mike. You're emailing me. You're sending all this ridiculous stuff. You have no idea. And I'm going to use this platform maybe to educate you just a little bit, but to let the other folks know that watching what the big play is here. Okay. So before we begin at current times, let's go back to Cold War times. How do we defeat the Soviets during the Cold War? We use psychological pressure. We use psyops. We use generalities, bandwagon psyop techniques, but we outspent them, not only in our military spending and technology. We were developing things, Star Wars. Everybody made a joke about Reagan's Star Wars, but it was real. It was real spending. It was real technology being investigated, and the Russians were going crazy over it. And they spent billions and billions of dollars. They spent themselves into a hole trying to keep up with the United States. Therefore, when it came time to feed the people and do all the things government's supposed to do, they couldn't do it. They were at that breaking point, and they had to do something, and that was they had to move a little bit more to our side of thinking, which I don't think they ever fully embraced, but they did it as a matter of survival and a matter of resetting their own government, resetting their own economy, playing nice for a while to rebuild. If you look back through Russian history, this is what they do. This is what they've always done. So you look at Ukraine and you take Crimea all the way out of it because Obama pretty much gave them Crimea. He didn't say one word. He didn't squawk. Almost, like the Syrian red line. Remember that? Where he told Assad, if you use chemical weapons on your people or gas your people, that's the red line we're going to cross. Well, Obama, let me be clear. Chemical weapons, munitions, that's the red line. At the same time, Assad probably had a backpack on himself, spraying the people down with gas. Shh, fuck you, Barack. And that's how that went. So that red line was crossed. And we still have Barack leading Joe Biden and Joe Biden's feckless team of idiots into the Ukraine war. So let me try and break this down as easy as I can for you. We outspent the Russians by billions of dollars over short periods of time. About 8 years was the last critical part where we were actually hurting ourselves, spending so much money on our military apparatus and technology that we knew the Russians couldn't keep up. They didn't have the resources. They weren't producing gas. They weren't producing oil like they are now. They were relying mainly on the Balkans for their fuel and economic driver. They weren't producing vehicles. They weren't producing anything. We spent. We broke them. The Berlin Wall came down. Everything changed. So what are they doing to us now? Now, the Democrats in this mic really think that we are Russian assets. All the elected Republicans, especially the conservatives, are Russian assets, and we want Putin to win because we love ruthless, thuggish dictators ruling the third largest economy in the world. So that's far from the truth, not even close. Here's the thing. We don't want Russia to win, but we cannot continue to move forward without a strategy. Russia has a clear strategy, at least one that I have gleaned. I don't know about others. This is strictly my opinion. I haven't talked to the great science people, the great generals about this particular operation, but it would just appear from the outside the Russians are employing our strategy against us. We're going to let the U.S. outspend itself again. So war is about attrition, right? We kill all the bad guys and we win, or they kill all of us and we lose. That's not going to happen here, folks. The war of attrition in this particular battle, this particular scenario is not going to happen. Russia has limitless people. They've lost a ton of people so far, but they still have conscripts. They have they're what, 4 times the size of Ukraine. They will outlast the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people are hiring as many as they can now. They're bringing in contractors. They're doing everything they can do just to keep up with the Russians. Putin knows this, and he will sacrifice some of his people to extend this out as long as he can. Not because he thinks it's good for his country to have an extended war, but it's good for his country that the U.S. continues to shovel money into Ukraine like it's a coal-fired furnace, and we just shovel it over there and it gets burned. But there are a few things that Ukraine does that are actually aiding the Russians. Right now, our procurement process, which I'm dealing with another issue, is horrid. If you're not connected and you're not a huge lobbyist and a huge firm with building parts, widgets in 4 or 5 political districts, so it can never be closed down, you're not anywhere. You're just not going to get the money from the government. So that's what they're doing. They're forcing these entities to build more, spend more, increase their technology to a certain point. That certain point stops with our government procurement. So what better way around it is to throw money Ukraine, let them spend our money. And that's what Biden seems to be doing. Let them develop these things. Let them launder off what they want to launder, send back to the Democrats, whatnot, whatever shenanigans is going on with the money. But their development of drones, surveillance capabilities, all these things that we know we have the capability of making, but it takes years to make. They're making these stuff in a very short amount of time, especially drones, surveillance drones, attack drones. We're looking at development process in months, not years. So that's a technology that we want, but unfortunately, Russia wants it as well. So every time that we spend money in Ukraine, they develop some cool kind of widget that is a force multiplier on the field. What happens? The Russians steal it. They take this thing apart, reverse engineer it, and now they have the technology and they have the capability of making it better because they're not jumping through all these hoops. In the meantime, what are we doing? We're still throwing money at this war daily. We're throwing money. You just saw Biden throw some more money at it that he shouldn't have. But that doesn't mean that we want Russia to win. Now, just my opinion, Russia wants this war to go on as long as it possibly can because he will take ground that will probably never go back to the Ukrainians. So he will take a little bit of territory. He will force NATO and the U.S. to spend money. And he will do this all under the auspices of NATO expansion. He will continue to cry that NATO is expanding as we spend more money and NATO spends money, which they're not spending near enough. These European countries that have the money to spend, this is in their neighborhood. They need to spend the money. This is not our war, but we're going to continue to spend money on this war to our detriment. Our military is faltering. We're running out of munitions. We have numerous problems with the woke, the ill-prepared troops, the lack of training, the lack of resources, because it's all going to Ukraine. And Putin's sitting back laughing at us because we're dumb enough to reverse fund the Cold War, that using the strategy that we employed, he is now employing that same strategy on us. And he's just sitting back smiling. The guy is not a dummy. He's not going to get this thing too big. He's not going to let this war get out of hand because he knows then we would have to act. NATO would act, other countries would act, and we would go to that World War III scenario. I think he wants to keep it a World War 2.5, so we just keep spending the money. The World War III is going to come from crazy Iran or somewhere in the Middle East, and then Russia, China, everybody will join. But right now, the Russians are using North Korean soldiers, so we know they're going to be on the front lines at some point. They're using conscripts from Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, the Balkans, Uzbekistan. Very few of their own folks from Moscow are ending up in the war. It's all the conscripts from all the Russian territories. So when do we see Cubans there? Because it's coming. It's coming. I think Putin, again, wants to extend this thing out as long as he possibly can to drain us of every last dollar sent over there. Now, if that translates to you Democrats that we want a Putin victory, you're obviously wrong. The key to victory here is not to play. It is not our war. Let Europeans fight this out. It's an Asiatic European battle. The Asiatic territories of Ukraine will probably fall to the Russians. They are Russian people anyway. They are not European. The Ukrainians are more European. The Russians are Asiatic, and you have that line in some of the regions that the Russians have captured, and they captured that at the will of the people, mind you. We speak to people on the ground there, and they are happy that the Russians are back.